So here's the very first of my reasons. That when we look at the data, organizations that have higher levels of change maturity have higher portfolio success rates across the board. And it's a pretty significant increase. As we embed change management skills and increase our level of change management maturity, the overall portfolio success rate goes up. This is usually the very first slide I take to senior leaders because our leaders are most invested in the overall health of the portfolio of change. And we are bringing a statistically significant enabler of more successful portfolios of change. So that's that first case. The second one is around preparing for the velocity of change. And even before a global pandemic, we would make the case that we are facing bigger change, faster change, more complex change, more dynamic, more cross-functional, multidisciplinary change. And all of that is happening against a backdrop of being more connected with more information than we have ever had before. It creates this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world that we are navigating ourselves, our teams, our projects, and our organizations through. That was before a global pandemic that forced an involuntary digital transformation and an instantaneous remote work experiment, and the reimagining of what's in front of us from a future of work perspective. If that's the velocity of change we all have in front of us, being great at change is one of the things we need in order to excel. So that would be that pitch. In order to handle the load of change coming at us, we need to grow change management capability. The next Y is enabling organizational agility. And what we find here is if we look across the research, agility is on executives' radars. It probably is on your leaders' radars. You'll notice from the research here in the PwC survey, it was on 76% of the CEOs' radars. 9 out of 10 in the McKinsey quarterly study said agility was critical. More agility equals better performance equals more competitive advantage. If agility is on our radar and we peel back the onion a little bit, we find that a change management capability is one of those critical enablers of organizational agility. Look across the literature. Change management as a core competency is a crucial enabler of organizational agility. So if agility matters for us now, we need to invest in building this capability. That would be that pitch. My next is really around saturation, that organizations increasingly are experiencing larger change loads than they can handle. And when we have more disruption than capacity, we end up saturated. We see nearly 3/4 of our respondents, and this is from a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, so I'll bet you that number is probably 110% now, that are nearing at or past that point of change saturation. And what we find in our research is that saturation is not free. It has cost and consequence at the individual level, at the project level, and at the organizational level. Individuals suffer fatigue and burnout and frustration and confusion. Projects suffer missed milestones, lack of information, collision. The organization suffers from attrition, loss of morale, loss of focus on the business basics. This is what happens when we have too much change going on. We have a couple of ways to deal with that. We can reduce the amount of change, which very few leaders will tackle, or we get better at implementing each of those changes and grow our buckets to handle more change. That's what the outcome of growing a change management capability would be. So that's that consequence of saturation. The next is about the strategic imperative, that I have yet to see an organization whose strategy is do everything exactly the same way as last year. Strategy has change built in it. And so if we want to achieve our strategic imperative, this promise of our strategy, we need to have built the skill set to implement and realize the outcomes of those changes. Strategy means change. To be successful in our strategy, we need to successfully land our changes. Change management helps us do that. This next one is creating competitive advantage, that the winners of the future will be those who can out-change the competition. Change is happening so rapidly because of that velocity of change that when we make a change, our competitors may catch up within minutes or weeks, where it might have been months and years. Outchanging is the way we stay at the front. So competitive advantage will derive from those who build the change muscle needed to outchange the competition. And we're not just outchanging the competition, we're outchanging a global pandemic, technological revolutions, geopolitical instability. There are a lot of things we are working to outchange. My next pitch here is it's around really multiplying the benefits of change management. We know from the research, if we do change management well on a project, we get better, we are more likely to meet objectives on time, on budget, and experience and expose ourselves to less risk and less cost. On a project, we know we get all that benefit, but we have tens or hundreds or thousands of initiatives going on that could each use a boost in the ability to deliver objectives on time, on budget, and with less cost and risk. An embedded capability lets us amplify and multiply the benefits of change management across all of the initiatives we have going on in the organization. And my very last one here is around leveraging a common approach and language. If we have 4 initiatives, each using some format of change management, they're going to be better off than they were without. But if they're each using a different flavor, there's some confusion that might start to emerge in the organization where those different approaches come across. And we don't get the advantages like effectiveness, efficiency, the ability to share resources, to pick each other's brains. A common approach that we grow when we invest time and energy in enterprise change management gives us all the additional benefit of consistent and common language, the ability to work better with and through one another.